can't think of any other way that, that for the kids to have died. But it's understanding now is what's left for me is how, and everybody will know Dee as a loving mother, and at work she was a professional caring nurse. How did she go from being that person to somebody taking the lives of her children? I can accept that it was caused by insanity, but I have so many unanswered questions that I hope the professional services who were treating her can answer, that will help me understand a bit more. But I can't be angry. The kids wouldn't want me to be angry. Kids never saw me angry. I was never angry with kids. They were clever kids that you would always just have to sit down and rationalise with them. And Connor, for a start, would always put up a kind of well thought out answer, and you would go, I'm not going to win this argument, so okay. But I just think anger is a negative emotion, and I don't want to be angry, but I do need answers, and I want to move forward positively, keeping the kids' memories alive.
I just want to start off by putting in a short disclaimer. What you are about to hear is taken from court documents, Gardaí interviews, the perpetrator's own words, and the children's father. I will not be giving an opinion or doing my usual reactions. I'm not even going to comment on the government body involved, as it is being construed as being biased. So in saying all that, time to move on and start. Newcastle is a village in the southwest of Dublin. It is the most sought after residential area in West Dublin, as it is close proximity for commuters to large business areas, such as City West and other business parks. Situated in the village is a small housing estate named Parsons Court. Here in August 2019, a family would move here, the McGinleys. A family of 5. Andrew 54, Deirdre 45, and their 3 children, Connor 9, Dara 7, and little Carla 3. 6 months later, on the 24th of January 2020, the children would die at the hands of their mother. Deirdre's first symptoms of anxiety that would overshadow her life emerged when she was still a student. She grew up in Dublin and was the youngest of 8 siblings. Her dad died when she was 20 months old. She was close to her mother, and it is said maybe a bit too close. She moved to Cork to study nursing in 1996 and was ridiculously homesick. 2 years later, after her mother was diagnosed with cancer, this is when she would first attend a GP with mental health problems. Her mother would eventually pass away in 2015 at the age of 85, which in turn would be an enormous source of stress to Deirdre. Later in her career, when she was studying to add to her nursing qualifications, she again became very stressed and had difficulty concentrating. But once the exams were over, things again improved. She was now a qualified paediatric nurse and worked in Crumlin Hospital in Dublin. When she worked there, she suffered a period of bullying. As she said herself, I had difficulty asserting my authority. I'm a bit of a people pleaser. Deirdre met Andrew in 2002 and they slotted into each other's lives easily from the start. Their marriage was a good one that had peaks and troughs, but looking back, she wondered how much of their struggles were actually her struggles. She loved Andrew and she said he was a really good guy. The anxiety began to take hold again early in their marriage. Though she became apt at hiding her feelings, she suffered from low self-esteem, tearfulness and low mood. At work, she had an increasing fear of something happening on her watch. Even when she was on her time off from work, she would ring in to check on the children in her care. When she became pregnant with Connor, she was really happy, and after his birth she was on cloud 9 for the first 4 months. Her marriage was also in a good place. Andrew was very paternal and just loved children. But when Connor reached 4 months, the earlier anxieties began to spiral. She blew everything out of proportion when it came to Connor's entirely normal developmental stages. She had well beyond normal worries, that he was not in a routine, was not taking regular naps. I would not take a soother, dummy, pacifier. I'm sure there are other names, but I'm sure you get my drift. Deirdre would go on to say she was too hard on herself and that Connor was really a good baby. But the anxiety and perfectionism would go on to feature in her parenting style. When Dara and Carla were born, it would add to her anxiety and stresses. She agonised over their eating, their toilet training, why they were not yet riding a bike or swimming. She watched the clock constantly to see how much time they spent on their screens. When Dara was a boisterous 2-year-old and went through a brief phase of hitting, she thought she was not giving him enough or the right kind of attention. She was completely distraught when Carla became a fussy eater. When Dara was older and suffered tummy aches from after changing his school, she again blamed herself. Dara was a great boy. He was very attached and attuned with me, Deirdre said. Family members tried to support and reassure her, but when she was in the thick of it, there was no talking to her. She later said, I can see now it's all normal development. Her feelings of inadequacy as a mother became a recurring theme in her thoughts, but one she mostly concealed from her husband, sisters and family. In March 2018, Deirdre took 12 weeks off work with stress after a child under her care in work died, and by the end of that year she wasn't able to enjoy anything. She lost 10 pounds in 6 weeks and could not get through the day without a nap. She did try to go back to work but was unable to. In late 2018, Deirdre went to her GP and they noted that she was struggling to get out of bed and wake up early. The GP reported that she wanted to get away and felt overwhelmed looking after the children. Her records noted that she can't manage the children at all. In early 2019, now back at work part-time, but still struggling with feeling overwhelmed, Deirdre described a fantasy of living in an apartment in Paris, no children, just her. The notion that her mental health issues were impacting on her role as a wife and mother by now had tightened its grip on her. By the summer of that same year, it was in her records, doesn't want to be around her children, doesn't feel she can go back to the house. Deirdre was admitted to St. Patrick's Psychiatric Hospital by July 2019. There she was described as overwhelmed, low mood, poor sleep pattern, excessive guilt, poor self-worth, early morning wakening and poor concentration. Some of these symptoms were of significant depressive illness, the doctor later reported. Sometime before Deirdre was released from the hospital, Andrew got a phone call from the hospital. He was asked if he thought Deirdre was a danger to herself or the children. Andrew was beyond shocked at such a question. I know what I'd like to say about that, but I won't. Deirdre's final diagnosis ahead of her discharge was moderate depressive episodes. She was so medically qualified, she took control of her own treatment. What she was going through day to day would not have been communicated in detail to Andrew by Deirdre. By September 2019, her mood took a sudden upswing. Her GP thought it was too high. She was waking up at night, baking and cooking and seemed elated, which can be recognised phenomenon for some people on the wrong type of antidepressants. She was advised to reduce her dosage. The 6 months before the children's deaths proved the most difficult between Deirdre and Andrew. They were talking less and mainly interacted around logistics, Deirdre told the psychiatrist. In November 2019, Deirdre's sister contacted the GP to express her concerns about her and said that she had deteriorated significantly. She could not get up to bring the children to school and she would not go to the doctor herself. She feared being put back in St. Patrick's Hospital. She felt shame, guilt, worthlessness, but eventually did agree to go back to hospital as an outpatient for a brief time. But she did state that she just wanted to evaporate. By December and into January 2020, her family did believe she started to improve, but she was presenting a different side to experts. Her counsellor noted in January, "She is as bad as I have seen her." She kept returning to the same theme. She was selfish, inadequate, and had damaged her children. Around the same time, her GP noted that things are really hard at home. The boys are acting out as discipline has started to slide, Deirdre said. On the contrary, it was reported that the children were found to be wonderfully engaging and delightful children. This was all a delusion, a manifestation of the mental illness that was gripping her. In the final week of the children's life, Deirdre started to think about a plan. She thought about ending her own life, but felt she couldn't leave the children behind. She said she was doomed and the children also. She felt they were going to end up mentally ill because of her and not secure. She told no one about these thoughts. On the Monday of that week, she saw her sister, but felt removed, less and less like herself. Deirdre could only see the positives in other people's lives and all the negatives in her life and the children's. When asked later if she had given any thought to the impact of killing the children on others, she said, "I was thinking people would be sad, but it was a definitive, this had to happen. I thought it was the right thing to do, the hard thing, but the right thing." She said all she could think about was what she imagined would be their struggles for the future. Now afterwards, all I can think of is what they had going for them, so I can't remember what I was worried about. On the 23rd of January, running into the 24th of January 2020, this is what was reported to have happened to Connor, Dara and Carla. This will be detailed as the information was available, and I think it would come across as biased by not showing what a woman and a mother is capable of, whether mentally ill or not, as I have done with other cases. Andrew went away on the Thursday morning for a work trip and was due back on the Friday evening. He had no concerns with leaving the children with Deirdre. Throughout the time he was away, he was in frequent contact with everyone at home, and Deirdre portrayed no sign that there was anything wrong. But on that Thursday when he left, she had purchased a rope with a view to making a noose, and looked up how to make one, and searched also for the N7 flyover and Poolbeg lighthouse. That evening she attempted to sedate the children and planned to suffocate them in their sleep that night. Connor was having a bowl of porridge before bed and Dara was having Cheerios. She crushed 6 to 8 morphine tablets to put them in the boys' bowls, calculating that they would ingest 3 or 4 each. But the minute Connor tasted it, he said, "What's that? That's disgusting," and spat it out. She put a tablet containing codeine in Carla's purple sippy cup, though she believed Carla had not consumed much of it. That night, as she fell asleep in the big bed, her 2 boys beside her, she felt relief that it had not worked. She thought then that she would not go through with it. She said, "I can't do it, but I don't know how I'm going to go on." The next morning, the children's final morning, Dara was off school with a cough and Carla didn't go to creche. Carla was playing with her dolls and toys and asking her mother to play with her. Dara was using the iPad and watching TV. After a while, both children were watching Trolls together. Deirdre pottered around doing chores and smoked a few cigarettes outside. At around 12 noon, Deirdre and Dara had words about screen time, and to her this reinforced her faulty thinking as she sees it now. She told Dara he had enough of screen time, and he responded that she was ruining his life. She knew then that this was another confirmation she had damaged the children and needed to follow through with her plan. She had to end their suffering. She then began to put her plan into action. She got a plastic bag and put it over Dara's head and duct taped it, and he suffocated. She then turned around and did the same to Carla. She remembers getting a text from her niece, either straight after they were both dead or with just Dara dead and about to kill Carla. She can't remember, but she does remember saying to her niece, "So exciting," in hearing the news her niece had received her wedding invitations, and at the same time thinking, "Look what I have just done," or "Look what I'm in the middle of doing." This is what Deirdre told Gardaí. She carried the bodies of Dara and Carla upstairs and laid them on the bed together. She realised Carla was still breathing, so she held her nose until she stopped. She collected Connor early from school as she knew Andrew would be home at 4 p.m. from his trip away, and she wanted herself and the children dead before he got home. There she exchanged brief words with another parent and the school secretary. Deirdre had also been texting Andrew at this stage, and he reported that there was nothing in the text to alarm him. On the way home from the school, they stopped off to get Connor's favourite bread roll in Tesco's. Deirdre was at this stage regretting what she had done, but didn't feel she could stop. When they got home, Connor was given his 15-minute screen time and sitting in the living room. Meanwhile, Deirdre wrote a note: "Don't go upstairs. Phone 999, I'm sorry." This she would stick to the bike in the hallway. Connor's final moments were spent with his mother watching Jurassic World. By now, Deirdre was wavering in her plan again. She said he was being really good. "I'm thinking I can't do this. This is awful. I can't not do this because the other two are dead." How would he live with that? How would he live knowing that his mother killed his siblings? She told Gardaí. As they were both watching the movie, Deirdre persuaded Connor to play a game by putting duct tape on his mouth and a plastic bag over his head. "When I tightened it, I think he got frightened. It's horrific. I know it's horrific," she said in an interview 4 days later. Asked later by a forensic psychiatrist if she knew what she had done was wrong, Deirdre stated, "I must have known it was wrong at some level, because I waited for Andrew to be away to do it." She said she remembers thinking, "What if I don't die?" and that if she survived, she would have to spend the rest of her life in prison. After Deirdre had killed Connor, Dara and Carla, she ingested 13 tablets and brought a half a bottle of wine with her and left the house at 4:10 p.m. and drove to the N7 flyover bridge. She intended to end her life there. At 5:10 p.m. she received a phone call from Andrew. They discussed him having to go to a wake that evening. His friend's father had just died. They normally did the weekly shop that day and brought the children over to see that friend. So basically discussing the logistics of how the evening was to go. Deirdre did not give any indication that there was anything wrong. Little did Andrew know that his children were already dead and Deirdre was on her way to killing herself. By 5:35 p.m. the drugs Deirdre had taken finally kicked in and she crashed her car into a verge. A woman passing in another car, a fellow nurse, found Deirdre slumped over the steering wheel and came to her assistance and brought her home. When this woman left Deirdre's home, she wandered aimlessly around the housing estate until one of the neighbours saw her and rang for an ambulance. By 7 p.m. Andrew arrived home to his wife being attended by paramedics outside the front door, but no one could tell him where the children were. Andrew raced inside the house hoping that the three of them were just watching TV and unaware of what was going on. Andrew would go on to find Connor in the play tent in the living room, dead. He screamed for paramedics, but it was too late. Andrew then panicked about Dara and Carla. He found the note pinned to the bike in the hallway and went to race upstairs. The paramedics tried to stop him, but to no avail. The level of distress was so high at this point, no one could stop him. He found his two babies dead in the bedroom. Deirdre was brought to hospital and put into an induced coma, and on the Sunday when she came out of it, her remorse, guilt and hopelessness at what she had done was immediate and overwhelming. She told the psychiatrist, "I wish I had a time machine," 2 days later, now on antipsychotic drugs. She was calm but heartbroken. She told her doctors the grief was unbearable. She wanted a magic wand to go back 3 weeks and ask for help. It was said that Deirdre harboured a psychotic moral justification for her actions. She believed her actions were morally right as she had irreparably damaged her children by her mental illness and bad parenting. Connor couldn't ride a bike at 9, Dara wasn't able to swim at 7, and Carla wasn't potty trained at 3, and she wanted to put an end to their suffering. On January the 31st, 2020, Connor, Dara and Carla were brought to the Church of the Holy Family in Rathcoole, and a Mass of the Angels was held, later being buried in Newcastle Cemetery, Dublin.
Although we are in a house of God, no God should allow this to happen. Father Kevin, when I spoke to you on Saturday, I was filled with rage and anger. But you spoke not to me about God's plan or about angels. You spoke about love and compassion and understanding. And you may never know how much that meant and how it has carried me through this far. Connor announced at Christmas he wanted to set up a YouTube channel containing what he never quite committed to, but I promised to help him, and I will do that for him. I promised Dara that I would coach at Rathcoole Boys, so apologies to the club, you may never get me out of the place again. And I promised Carla a snowman. The place will be filled with snowmen every time it snows. It will only be with your help, support and friendship that we will be able to patch our hearts together in some way, but we will still be forever heartbroken. Connor, Dara, Carla, I love you. I love you, I love you.
Deirdre was questioned and formally charged for the murder of her children, and she pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity and committed to the Central Mental Hospital to receive treatment until her trial. I have already given you details of what was said at the trial and interviews with the Gardaí. It was a jury trial and it took place in May 2021. After all the evidence given from both sides and with an agreement of both the defence and prosecution, the jury was instructed by the judge to find Deirdre not guilty by reason of insanity. He said the evidence was all one way. He also said it was up to them to decide if there was any fact that threw doubt on the expert medical evidence, but he said it seemed to him that no such fact had been identified by the prosecution. The jury foreman asked the judge if they had to bring in the same verdict in the case of all three children. They also asked for more clarity about the criteria that must be fulfilled for an insanity verdict. After considering their verdict for an hour and a half, they wanted to resume their deliberations the next day. The next day she was acquitted of murder by reason of insanity and was committed to the Central Mental Hospital, where she still is today. Her condition is reviewed every 6 months.
2 psychiatrists gave evidence to the trial. Both agreed that Ms. Morley was legally insane at the time of the killings, that she did not know what she was doing was wrong and was not able to stop herself. The jury of 10 men and 2 women took almost 4.5 hours to find Ms. Morley not guilty by reason of insanity of murdering the 3 children. The verdict came after Mr. Justice Paul Coffey reminded them again that the evidence in the case was all one way. Mr. McGinley has tried to keep his children's legacy alive by setting up a YouTube channel and charities in their memory.
But I can't just be tearful and sad all the time, and I can't be angry all the time either. So you try and control all of that.
Deirdre Morley has been committed to the Central Mental Hospital, where she has been since shortly after the killings. The case will be back in court at the end of this month for a report on whether she continues to need inpatient care.
It is understood that Deirdre may only be in the Central Mental Hospital up to 5 years, if doctors deem her to be mentally well enough. Even before the trial in May 2021, she was showing signs of improvement. She was neatly dressed with normal eye contact and speech, with no thoughts of harm to herself or others. She even spoke of wanting to move forward to escorted community release after the trial was over, which I think is the same as they do for criminals who have served the length of their sentence and are on good behaviour. They get moved into an open prison, where they have more freedom and gain skills to be integrated back into society under supervision. So I'm guessing it's the same if you're in the Central Mental Hospital. Andrew, after the children died, moved forward as best he could. He helped the doctors in order for Deirdre to get the help she needed. He was given Deirdre's medical records with her consent, but they were mostly redacted, so basically useless. He just wants answers, and while he found out a lot at the trial, He still feels he's left in the dark as to how this happened and why he wasn't told that he and the children were in danger. He has now joined with Una Butler in campaigning to change the legislation involving family members who are dealing with others in the mental health system to be more involved in their treatment so this does not happen again. Still nothing is being done. 45 cases since 2000 and it's still happening. Deirdre no longer speaks to Andrew and her family have tried to silence Andrew from being so public. He has said he will be pursuing a divorce from her and he may have to sell the family home if she contests it or wants half of everything, so that's a worry for him. People have asked Andrew, with all he is doing, with the charities and keeping the children's names out there, does it make him happy? He said, "It fills me with so much love that it lifts me." Is it as good as happiness or joy? No, but it is love. Asked, is he angry? Yes, he is angry, but he doesn't think anger will get him anywhere. He just doesn't want this to happen again. Andrew is also in the process of suing the HSE, and Deirdre is also suing them separately. The HSE is the Health Service Executive Government Body, who was in charge of Deirdre's treatment.